Matthew Dickerson is with us. Breakthroughs in technology, new inventions, and just about anything in technology. Good morning, Matthew.
It sounds fantastic, Chris. You're building it up better every week.
Well, it's great to have you with us again today, mate. Listen, I understand there might be a new robot that can sniff the freshness of meat.
Well, it's not actually a robot. It's actually some labelling that we might end up seeing in supermarkets when we go and shop. And effectively what it is, it's a little barcode that sticks on with a number of bars across it, so 20 individual bars. And they're all set up with a substance on them that will actually detect the odour in the same way that our noses detect an odour. Now, it's too much to expect humans to go along and remember what each individual colour of each individual bar would mean. So it's teamed up with an app that you would use that effectively you would walk into a supermarket and pull out your phone and look at the various colours on those different barcodes and see the state of that meat. But more importantly, and this is the real breakthrough that they're talking about here, when you take that meat home and have it in the refrigerator or have it sitting around the house, and then you go 3 days later, gee, is that meat good enough to use? Should I throw it out now? And what you normally do to be safe is you throw it out. You don't want to go and have some meat that might be off. But the idea here is in your home, you pull out your smartphone, look at the barcode on there, and it will tell you the state of decay of that meat. The idea is reduce a lot of wastage, obviously, and save a lot of money. In its early days yet, there's some scientists in Singapore that have developed it to this point in time, but something pretty exciting in terms of allowing us to use our foods in better ways.
Fascinating, mate. Now, what happened to the stock market yesterday? It wasn't a crash in the sense that we would think, the shares didn't plunge, but it went offline for a while, didn't it?
No, it's a bit scary, isn't it, when you say the stock market crashed yesterday. Everyone, of course, immediately goes to their superannuation or their investments and looking for those values, but no.
That didn't happen.
That didn't happen, no, but you couldn't actually trade at all. It lasted about 20 minutes of trade, normal trade yesterday morning. The ASX, of course, opens at 10 a.m. each weekday, and by 10:20 it had been closed down. And obviously not a great situation. There'd been an upgrade that had been planned for the ASX here, and that planning had been going on for about a year. And so they finally got to the point where this was the day, the switchover day. Obviously they had the weekend to get it all right. They switched over on the weekend, ready to go Monday, and it didn't work. And there were some pretty harsh comments on social media. Some people said, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Which, of course, is the standard reply that you get from anyone that's got some sort of problem with their electronics. People were calling it the Australian Stop Exchange rather than the Australian Stock Exchange. But, yeah, it's amazing. It's the amount of planning. You can imagine the amount of money that would have been lost through trades yesterday alone. But all that planning, all the things that go into place ready to go with an upgrade, and it can still go wrong. And so when someone's got their home computer, they're doing an upgrade on it, and something goes wrong and it takes longer than they think it might take, just think of the poor old ASX 200 where you're there ready to go with your upgrade after a year of planning, 4 dress rehearsals, and it still went wrong. So it can happen to anyone.
It's Tech Talk with Matt Dickerson. And Matt, how can a smartwatch help keep domestic violence victims safe?
It is pretty sad, isn't it, Chris, the amount of domestic violence that we have in this nation and, in fact, around the world. And some people are always trying to work on ways to solve problems with domestic violence. And this particular bit of technology is quite good. We all know that we've got smartwatches now that are quite incredible. They're mini computers on our wrists. And some of them have obviously got the ability to make phone calls. And, of course, if you have an accident, if you're wearing certain types of smartwatches now, if you've got to have an accident, you fall over, you're in a car accident, if the watch experiences a certain number of Gs and then it doesn't make a phone call, it doesn't move after that, it will automatically make a phone call to emergency services. But that's a fairly drastic situation in terms of DVs. So one developer has actually developed a process where you can feel like you're in a situation that might be escalating, in a DV situation that might be escalating. And so you press a button on your smartwatch or hold a certain button down, and rather than ring the police, which can sometimes make the situation escalate out of control before it's even really gotten to any point, what it actually does is it rings a group of predefined numbers. You put in, might be some of your close relations, people that live nearby, maybe some neighbours, but a few people that you've got that you can rely on if you've got a situation that might be escalating. And the research has shown that if you've got some friendly faces around, rather than, say, the police, for example, then that situation that might have been escalating can be calmed down And often those people can get there quicker because your next door neighbour can come in quicker than no matter how fast the police might respond, the next door neighbours can come in quicker. So it's quite a good process, a bit sad that we need it, but quite a good process to allow people to be able to have that situation. The organisation is called Stand By You, the letter U, not the word U, Stand By You Foundation, that's been developing this particular app, and I see it as something that would be very useful for anyone that feels like they may be in that DV situation.
Definitely. Now, when we go to the supermarket, should we be wiping over our shopping trolleys?
You do see a bit of that happening at the moment, don't you? People walk in with their wipes, they have some little spray, I don't know how good the spray is, and they spray it on their supermarket trolleys and away they go and go about their shopping. But there's been, there's actually a test going on right now as we speak in Adelaide, where there's a little unit that basically all the shopping trolleys are wheeled through the unit. And the unit itself basically sprays a disinfectant over the shopping trolleys. Even the baskets that you carry around go through the unit, and it's just a water-based solution that kills germs to make it much easier, much more convenient, so that when you walk into the supermarket, you can have confidence that all the trolleys have already been sanitised. A great little invention. It's actually been invented overseas, but they will be manufactured in South Australia if the trial is successful. At the moment, one supermarket in South Australia is where the trial's going on, but the idea obviously is to roll out amongst as many supermarkets as possible across the nation. But a good little idea, nice and simple. It's basically when the trolley person brings the trolleys back from the car park, they wheel it through the sanitizer, out the other end, they come all clean, ready to be used for shopping.
And the highly anticipated Rivian electric truck and SUV will be out next year. How much are they going to be, Matt?
Yeah, it's still pretty expensive, Chris, but I think for the SUV and truck market, as they call it in the US, I think those people are used to paying a fair bit of money for their vehicles. Now, Rivian has talked a little bit about some of their vehicles coming out. 2018 was the first time they talked about it. And these are SUVs for that classic sort of American huge vehicle that we see people running around with in America. I don't think Australians can quite understand why they need such big vehicles, but they've got a pickup truck and they've got an SUV, and they're both available next year. They're special launch editions. The truck will be $75,000 US and the SUV will be $77,500 US. Now again, they sound expensive. Convert those to Australian dollars. Obviously, you get both up over $100,000, but there's some people who pay that for their decked out Land Cruisers or their BMW SUVs now. So even though they sound fairly expensive, they are expensive, but people are paying those kind of monies now. But when you start to look at the specs of some of these, they're quite impressive. The new editions will be, or the standard editions will be 480 kilometres of range. There'll be editions a year after, 640 kilometres of range. They can tow, I think from memory, they were towing up to 5 tonnes. So they've got huge towing capacity. They've got 5 and 7 seat versions of the SUV. So they are those classic sort of big SUVs and trucks that Americans love. In America, in some states, you can get a $7,500 tax credit. So it gets down around that $70,000 US. Again, still fairly expensive, but when you look at some of the alternatives from Tesla, from General Motors, from Ford, there's other ones from Lordstown and Bollinger, so there's a whole range of electric trucks and SUVs coming out. I think the Rivian will be up there as one of the very popular ones.
So if you do buy an electric truck or an electric vehicle, do they set up all your charging at home for you? How do you get all the charging set up?
Yeah, so there's a few things, Chris. One thing is that they can plug into a standard power point. Now, the standard power point charging is slow, so you can do it with a standard power point, but most people that have got one at home don't. There'll normally be a fast charge that will come as part of the actual vehicle you buy. Certainly in the higher end vehicles that come standard, or in the lower end vehicles you might pay extra to have a extra charging unit. And that really then is just installed by any electrician. Typically a couple of $100 you might pay for an electrician to install that fast charging unit, and those fast chargers then typically charge about 7 or 8 times faster than a normal power point. So most people that are planning on charging at home most of the time would put something like that in.
Right. And still on motor vehicles, BMW's range of EVs is moving ahead. What is their latest model?
Yeah, because I remember way back, I think 2011 they launched their first vehicles. It was probably a couple of years after that, about 2012 or 13, I remember driving the first i3, and I was pretty impressed with it, although the range of the i3 was fairly limited. The first one came out, it was only about a 50 or 60 kilometre range, so good for very small little trips around town, but I think it was as much as anything a test of concept or proof of concept vehicle. The i3's progressed from there now, and it's selling in larger and larger numbers. But the SUV market seems to be where all the action's happening in no matter what type of vehicle, electric vehicle or ICE vehicle. They seem to be really focused on that SUV market. So BMW, their next electric vehicle is the iX, and they've basically brought out an SUV. It's between their X3 and X5 in size. So it's kind of that sort of mid, not a large SUV, that sort of mid-sized, and it's got some pretty impressive specs. 0 to 100 in under 5 seconds, 370 kilowatts. Range, they've really worked on the efficiency of this. So they've got a battery that they're talking about that's larger than 100 kilowatt hours. Now, at the moment, the Tesla Model S has got a 100 kilowatt hour battery, so that's a fairly large battery, but they're talking about a range of 600 kilometres. And that seems to be something that gets people pretty excited when you start to talk about range. So you get an SUV with a range like that and the BMW tag on the front of it, then you start to get something that's pretty appealing to people. One of the really interesting things is that with electric vehicles, you don't need that front hole to be able to bring the air in through a radiator. It's not relying on airflow through a radiator to cool the engine down. And of course, BMW have got that classic kidney design that's been so much a part of BMW for so long. Well, they've still kept with that, but there's actually nothing behind it. It's a fake kidney. There's no grille behind it. It's actually with some of the electronics, some of their radar controls, some of their cameras are all installed in that, but they want to keep that same sort of kidney look to it. So classic sort of BMW look, but built from the ground up as an electric vehicle. I can see something like this being very popular, Chris.
Fantastic, Matt. And just wanted to finish on my robot vacuum that I bought recently. It's going so well. It's an Ecovax D-Bot robot vacuum. Cost me $230. I've got a clean home now. It's going so well.
Excellent. And more importantly, you've got out of doing the hard work of going around with a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, they're great. I was talking to a chap who lives in Burke who's sadly in a wheelchair, and I said, mate, you've got to get a robot vacuum. They are fantastic. They do the job so well. Thank you, Matthew. Of course, we can talk to you on YouTube. We will be talking technology again next week. Thanks, mate. Have a good week.
Thanks, Chris. See you later.